Welcome to the GameRamble video review for Gauge, narrated by me, Dark Cloud. As always, the full text version of this review can be found on the GameRamble website linked below. Also, a warning, this video may potentially contain seizure triggers, so if you suffer from photosensitive epilepsy, your discretion is advised. The TLDR for Gauge is that it's extremely simple to play, but that is precisely why it's so addictive. Anyone can instantly learn how to play the game, but achieving the big scores requires focus and concentration. This is easier said than done, as the game actively tries to break your concentration and mess with your eyes. The psychedelic visuals can cause quite an eye strain, so this game is best played in short bursts, but overall it's a lot of fun. Gameplay receives an 8 out of 10. Gauge is very simple, but surprisingly addictive and challenging. Graphics receives an 8 out of 10. The visuals are incredibly psychedelic and not recommended for anyone with an epileptic condition. Sound receives an 8 out of 10. The electronic music and sound effects fit the game perfectly. The overall score for Gauge is 8 out of 10. Now for the full review. Gauge is one of those games ideal for when you feel like killing some time but don't want to invest hours in something more in-depth. Your only purpose is to chase a high score, and pressing the spacebar key is the only thing required to do so. Occasionally you may have to press spacebar and control, but it's about as complicated as things get in Gauge. Don't be fooled into thinking that Gauge is easy though. Tapping the spacebar controls the length of your gauge, but if it touches the inner or outer edges of its confines, you lose a life. The closer you can get your gauge to the outer edges, the more points you score, but it's easier to slip up and lose a life. The risk versus reward mechanic makes for very tense and addictive gameplay sessions. There is only one power up in the game, and it always appears close to the inner limit of the gauge bar. You can take the risk and let the gauge drop down to grab it, which nets you a bunch of bonus points, and the option to activate a second gauge that you have to control with a control key. Using the second gauge doubles your score, but since it moves at a different speed from your primary gauge, it can be tricky to prevent it from touching the outer limits. Gauge would have been a little boring if tapping spacebar and control was all there was to it, so in order to make things a little more challenging, the game continually tries to distract you from your task. Text will randomly pop up in an attempt to draw your attention away from your gauge, and pulsating colors place an extra strain on your eyes. The game also plays dirty with stuff like screen shakes and blurring, which really mess with your concentration. In fact, things become so psychedelic that the game warns players with epileptic conditions to consult their physicians before playing. Usually these types of warnings are just in place as a precaution, but in Gauge it's absolutely essential that players take heed. This is the type of game where it's a good idea to take frequent breaks while playing, if you value your eyesight. While initially a mobile title, Gauge works pretty well on computers and the psychedelic retro visuals don't look out of place. The price has been kept low, and considering that there are 5 game modes available, it also offers pretty good value for money. In normal mode, you try to attain a high score before you run out of lives. You can achieve extra lives while playing, and your lives actually serve as your score multiplier as well, so it's not a good idea to waste any of them if you want to climb the leaderboards. Baby mode makes things a bit easier, while hard mode on the other hand only gives you 1 life to play with. Finally, there's a timed mode that only gives you a specific time limit to achieve a high score, and a touch mode where you're only allowed to press the spacebar a certain number of times. These modes offer some nice variation and will keep your player longer than expected. The PC version also includes some Steam achievements, but don't expect them to be easy. In fact, the developer of Gauge has intentionally made one of the Steam achievements impossible to get, which might be a deal breaker for achievement hunters. The electronic music in Gauge matches the psychedelic visuals, although the tracks are also designed to lull you into breaking your concentration. Getting too caught up in the music can cause you to start timing your button presses to the beats, which rarely ends well. We wouldn't call Gauge a relaxing game, as blinking at the wrong time can literally cost you a life, but like all score chasing games, it will put you in that hyper-focus zone where you can forget about your surroundings. The game is being advertised as an experimental and minimalistic sport game, but don't be fooled into thinking that it's like anything you might see on ESPN. To the casual observer, it will more than likely resemble something that some secretive government agency or cult might have used to brainwash people. For all we know, they might be correct, as we enjoyed the game way more than we thought we would, and will return to it regularly. Thanks for joining me for this Gauge PC review. Remember to like, subscribe and share. Until next time.